At the time, I think I referred to this work, and again, it's a very early work, and it's one that we just restored it, and I was quite glad to see it again, because it was interesting to think about what some of the processes that I was trying to think about at the time were, what was going on. And in addition to domesticity, which was very important to all of my early work was shot within my own home, apartment, wherever, like something very, a bedroom, in this case it was 3 rooms, very much about the domestic and being located in that space and defining that space as an art space. Rather than just as a place where one lived and maybe had a studio. The apartment itself, the apartments that I lived in, I was very peripatetic, as many were in those eras, were the studio. And I was very adamant about that. And so they became the backdrop and the location for all of my studio production. And at the time, I think I referred to this work as a top of the table, under the table piece. And I think I meant that there were different levels of consciousness being portrayed here. And as the artist, I didn't have complete control over them. The sound person could choose whatever audio he wanted, and he would sometimes get caught up in the discussion of this this arcane turtle, turtle abelia, I don't know what, like just how to capture them, how to feed them, how to train them. And it said they do not respond to punishment is one of my favorite lines from the whole book. And, anyway, it was, it's absurd. It's sort of an absurd piece, but yet there are real turtles in it. And they were my pets. And so there's a whole kind of, through the looking glass part that happens with it. And then the camera could focus on wherever he wanted to go. He could go slowly or quickly in and out of the rooms, and it was out of my hands. And the only thing I had control over was my own action. And that was sort of an important aspect of this particular piece. But amongst all the Avalanche artists, the work I was particularly taken with at the time was Vito Acconci. And these works were very striking to me for a number of reasons. Okay. This is Biting as Much of My Body as I Can from 1970, Vito Acconci. And this is Trademarks, I believe this is called. And this would be what he did, and I think out at NASCAD he and Gary Neal Kennedy bit each other, and then they inked their bite marks and made impressions of them. So they had the resulting artwork we see on the far right, I believe, is the print. And this next piece, I only ever saw as I believe, I'm pretty sure I have a good memory of it being in the magazine. Here Acconci performs a mundane activity, stepping up and down off a chair at the rate of 30 steps a minute for as long as he could manage. And he performed this activity once daily for 1 month, and he recorded his progress in notations. The resulting documents are from the film he took and the measurements he made. So what you see is when he started in November, he could do 5 minutes, but by the 30th, he was up to 21 minutes. So his endurance, this is a bit of a fitness thing, an early fitness artwork. But this is a good example of another thing very prevalent in conceptual art, which is the index, creating an index, a list. Something that would allow a very mundane or banal activity to be presented as for itself, like in and of itself. But this is, the artwork is the performance, but that was done in private, so the only thing that could be exhibited then becomes the documentation. And this is often true of conceptual art that resulted in two-dimensional form in photography or whatever. I tended more to go in with video and performance. Now this work, Seedbed, really galvanized my attention the most. And this is Acconci's most infamous work. Which many of you know. He constructed a ramp in the gallery to create a space just big enough for him to lie in. There he masturbated while gallery goers walked over top of him. All the while he fantasizes often about the people walking over him. So he'd speak directly to you. I'm doing this to you. I'm doing it with you. I'm doing it for you. Which would have been alarming, I can imagine, or perhaps interesting. But he has a beautiful speaking voice, very kind of like a little bit like a lounge lizard, kind of, you know, sort of seductive, take you in kind of thing. He was a poet before he became a visual artist. Now he's an architect, but so he's very mobile in his pastimes. But he, the spoken words were transmitted through a speaker, which you can see in the back there. So you could hear him, but you couldn't see him. Here's a little, just a kind of an installation, or an installation shot he would have. So you can see the ramp, and this is him underneath. In this collapsing of public and private, seedbed really gives a lot of permission to artists, or I thought it was giving me permission, I'll put it that way, to pursue some activities that might not be considered art previously. So I'll just show you a little excerpt from a work of mine. This is not a work that has been excavated. It is widely circulated. It's called Birthday Suit with Scars and Defects. It was made in 1974. I'm just going to show you a couple minutes of it, but just to fold it into this discussion, because this really took a very straightforward approach to this idea.
September 22nd, 1947 to September 22nd, 1974. In honor of my birthday, I'm going to show you my birthday suit with scars and defects. (1947). Surgery at birth to remove goiter. (1947). Transfusion because of serious illness. 3 months old. (1950). Fell on a bleach bottle while riding a tricycle in the basement. 3 years old.
So this work takes a much more straightforward approach to the idea of knowledge acquisition, this time concentrating on the memory of the body itself. The scars are cataloged as a series of actions, mostly accidents and mishaps, that have left their mark on my own body. I'm going to show you a very short excerpt from the 3-channel work which I was referring to Internal Pornography from 1975. It's a 31-minute, 3-channel installation work that prior to this exhibition was only screened once, right after it was made. As with Know Your Turtle, this work combines chance with the idea of simultaneity. The 3 channels were each recorded separately. The length was determined by the length of the reel-to-reel tape, which is not an uncommon practice in this era, to put the tape on, turn the camera on, and let it run. 30 minutes, 20 minutes, so however long the tape was, 60 minutes sometimes. So this was not uncommon. And the titles were inserted afterwards. There's a title at the beginning of each of these with an insert edit function. So what you see combining on the 3 screens, and they are meant, and then I know that at the Doris McCarthy Gallery, they are on 3 separate monitors, which is how they were first screened, which is how it was meant to, its original presentation, not projections or flat screens or anything. They're on monitors, which gives it that sort of vintage feel, which it is vintage indeed. Again, so that what you see when each of the 3 pieces are playing was not planned in any moment by moment, frame by frame way that we have of editing now. And it was by chance, because I did one part of it, and I believe it was several days later I did the second part, and the third part I did the next day. But I didn't do them so close, and I didn't time anything. I just did it. And that's, so it's a combination of improvisation and where you set up a structure, and this is very much like conceptual art, I think. You set a structure, you pour the content into it and see what happens. And this is what, again, I like the idea of not being completely in control of the work as it was played back. The left channel is me lying in bed, relating recent dreams. The middle channel is my hands handling a number of plants that I had grown in my apartment. And the right channel is me standing in front of a map of the world, reading from a drugstore manual for teenage girls entitled Once a Month, the Egg Travels. So this is Internal Pornography, 1975.
I live in Australia and I have 2 sons who are wizards. Once a month the egg travels. And if the couple has sex relations at that time, the egg meets the sperm. I'm lying on the beach when a really large blimp explodes in midair. How effective is effective? Spewing flaming wreckage for miles. When a group of 100 fertile, healthy couples have intercourse over a period of 1 year, and no method of contraception whatsoever is used, between 60 and 80 pregnancies can be expected.